The film begins by showing a hotel where an old woman wearing a wedding dress is lying down and appears to be dying. Holding a red book, she reminisces about the happy days of her wedding and visiting the hotel with her husband. But how did it come to this? Elsewhere, a man named Carlos returns to his apartment and finds his brother Oliver in a state of anxiety and distress. Carlos tries to calm him down, but before Oliver can explain, a detective named Marco suddenly appears. Panicking, Carlos insists that they have done nothing wrong, but it's futile because Marco has already obtained Oliver's confession to a crime. While Oliver continues to apologize and beg for forgiveness, Carlos demands a warrant for their arrest, which Marco does not have. Nevertheless, the detective is adamant about dragging the two brothers away, even brandishing a weapon, forcing Carlos to fight back. After the altercation, Marco wonders about his hand moving on its own. Oliver runs to his brother and starts shouting for help, but strangely, no one comes. At the same time, there is a loud booming sound, like an explosion from above. And again, there are no screams or alarm sounds. Carlos's injury is quite severe, causing him to bleed profusely, prompting Oliver to cover the wound. Angered, Oliver approaches Marco with the intent of revenge, but before he can act, Marco quickly pushes him away and forces him to stay quiet. Marco also refuses to take Carlos to the hospital, stating that the police station has medical staff to treat his wounds. Oliver then helps Carlos walk, and the three of them begin to descend to the ground floor. Along the way, Marco finds hair in his clothes of unknown origin. When they reach the exit, they find it locked, so they continue down the stairs. However, no matter how far they descend, they always end up back at the top as if stuck in a loop. They decide to explore both up and down but find no end. Marco tells the brothers to stay put while he runs down the stairs, noting the floor numbers and trying to open all the doors, but they are all locked. Strangely, he finds himself back with Carlos and Oliver again. The worsening situation leads Carlos to wonder if this is a hallucination. Meanwhile, a frustrated Marco keeps going up and down the stairs, checking the doors again. But the results are the same, leaving Marco shocked. Curious, Marco tries dropping his keys through the stairwell gap, only to see them fall back down from above. Marco angrily threatens the brothers, accusing them of giving him something illegal, but they are confused, as they are also trapped there. It seems the staircase forms an endless loop. Oliver checks his phone, but finds no signal. He shouts for help, but there is no response. Hearing Carlos in pain, Oliver tries to remove the bullet from his brother's leg, but Carlos refuses, saying Oliver is too careless and can't even handle everyday tasks properly. Meanwhile, Marco, still frustrated, breaks a vending machine to get a bottle of water, which Oliver quickly grabs to clean his brother's wound. 4 hours later, they are still trapped, and Marco looks at his family photo in his wallet and finds an unfamiliar small card which he decides to discard. The detective then reveals that he has some medication he usually uses for himself, and he gives it to Carlos to help alleviate the pain for a few hours. After Carlos falls asleep, Marco and Oliver eat food from the vending machine and sit together to chat. Marco shows a family photo explaining that he was supposed to celebrate his 15th wedding anniversary with his wife that night. In response, Oliver threatens to harm Marco's family if anything bad happens to Carlos. Oliver then searches through the bags for something useful, but finds little of value. The next day, Carlos wakes up, but appears to be dying. He tells Oliver to enjoy and appreciate life and to stay away from harmful things as he did. Shortly after, Carlos dies in Oliver's arms. Devastated, Oliver immediately attacks Marco. Marco, also consumed by guilt, admits that the shooting was accidental. The scene then shifts to a beautiful house in the countryside, where Daniel is helping his sister Camilla learn a magic trick using cards, while their stepfather Roberto watches in awe. Their mother Sandra arrives, reminding them to finish packing as they are about to visit Daniel and Camilla's biological father. Daniel packs a hamster, a deck of playing cards, and an inhaler for Camilla, as instructed by his mother. Before leaving, they receive a call from Daniel's biological father. Sandra angrily assures him that Roberto hasn't consumed alcohol in the past 5 years and is a good driver. Shortly after, the family sets off on their journey. During the trip, Roberto finds a piece of bamboo and immediately throws it out the window. A while later, they stop at a gas station. Roberto gives Camilla a sip of juice, even though she is allergic to sugar. Camilla then follows her mother to the restroom, leaving her inhaler with Roberto for safekeeping. When Sandra learns what happened, she scolds Roberto, calling him careless. They continue their journey, but what they feared happens. Camilla starts having an asthma attack. Sandra and Roberto quickly attend to her, but when Roberto rushes to get the inhaler, it turns out to be broken. To make matters worse, Daniel admits he forgot to bring the spare inhaler, leaving Sandra with no choice but to decide to return home to get it. As they get back into the car, they suddenly hear a loud explosion. They quickly return to the gas station, only to find it deserted, with no one, including the cashier, in sight. Sandra reluctantly takes an inhaler without paying. As they continue their journey, Daniel sees another sign, information board or billboard, while Sandra scolds Roberto, saying her ex-husband's judgment of Roberto being a drunk and careless man was right. This causes an argument. Daniel tries to calm them down, saying it's unnecessary, but no one listens, so he can only help his sister stay calm. A while later, they find another gas station, although Roberto thinks it's the same one. Just like before, the gas station is deserted, and they decide to continue their journey. A few minutes later, they see the same sign again, so Roberto stops the car and swears they are driving the same road, as if it's repeating. Feeling desperate, Daniel, not believing it, walks the opposite way. Roberto quickly catches him and brings him back to the car. Sandra insists on continuing to find a hospital to treat Camilla, whose condition is worsening, but they only find the same sign and gas station. Adding to the confusion, Roberto's watch shows it's late at night, but the sun is still shining. Camilla, now very weak, loses consciousness, making Sandra cry and scream during the drive. After seeing the same sign repeatedly, Roberto decides to stop the car and asks the others to wait while he walks through a dry field, hoping to find a way out. This angers Sandra even more, and she decides to keep driving, ignoring Daniel's warnings, thinking she is dreaming and hitting herself to wake up. When the car stops, Daniel gets out with Camilla, while their mother drives off, unaware her children are no longer in the car. While carrying his sister, Daniel walks back to the sign and sees Sandra returning. The next time Sandra finds a gas station, she goes inside and stays there, crying in despair. Meanwhile, Daniel lies down next to Camilla and sadly watches his sister pass away. Roberto returns from a different direction, confirming that each zone is a repetitive loop. Time passes, and after 35 years, Marco and Oliver are still trapped in the staircase. Marco, now an old man unable to walk, has to crawl up and down the steps. Oliver, now a healthy middle-aged man, reads a book found in a bag, listens to music, and stays fit by exercising daily. They eat food from the vending machine, which resets every day, so food and drinks are always available. Oliver looks forward to the reset to retrieve his items, collecting things and building useful objects, including a shower from water bottles and nail clippers from the bag, which help him trim his hair and mustache. Marco's life is not as orderly. He relies on Oliver for various tasks, including using the bathroom. It is evident that both are starting to lose their sanity. Oliver prays and worships Carlos's skeleton whenever the bag resets, sometimes inviting Marco to join, covering their faces with paper bags and muttering incomprehensible words. There are many writings on the walls to count the days and serve as a diary for their crazy thoughts. Marco is obsessed with remembering things and constantly counts his age, Oliver's age, and even his daughter's age, who must be an adult by now. Before sleeping, Marco repeatedly says his name to avoid forgetting it. The scene then shifts to show an old woman on an escalator who eventually dies, and a boy passing by takes the hamster from her hand. Then it shows an endless road where 35 years have also passed for the family. They get food from a gas station convenience store that restocks or resets every day. Roberto has now become an old man living like an animal, only eating and indulging his desires in a car parked near the road sign. Sandra, also old, seems traumatized, remaining silent and unresponsive. Daniel, now an adult, lives separately from his parents on the land. His only companion is his beloved hamster. Using items from the gas station, Daniel has built a decent tent, equipped with makeshift tools for survival. He keeps all the drawings he has made over the years. Every time a reset occurs, Daniel finds functioning inhalers, but they are useless, so he throws them in the same spot, creating a pile over time. Daniel keeps himself busy by listening to his Walkman, walking around, having lunch while enjoying nature, and playing cards. At one point, Roberto finds Camilla's doll on the road and throws it near Daniel's tent. After finding the doll, Daniel goes to see Roberto, who mentions Sandra. At this moment, we learn that Daniel has been trying to forget Sandra by pretending she doesn't exist. However, this isn't surprising to Roberto, as Sandra can't remember anyone now. Roberto believes he has something important to tell Daniel, but can never remember what it is, and that's just how old people are. Back to the emergency staircase, Marco suddenly wakes up and starts screaming. Oliver hears this and rushes to him, simultaneously hearing advice. Marco says he can't remember what he needs to say, indicating that his end is near. Shortly after, Marco reveals that he is actually Daniel, and that nothing is real, because this is an alternate version of their lives. He triggered the repetition when he killed Carlos. The scene then shifts to the road where Sandra finally dies, and Roberto buries her next to Camilla. Daniel watches the process, reminiscing about happy memories with his sister. Roberto explains that Sandra stopped speaking around 20 years ago, right when Daniel left to live on his own. He adds that Sandra's death is a relief, as it frees her from this hell. The scene alternates between Roberto and Marco, who both start describing intense headaches causing them great pain, before revealing they see everything clearly, signifying they will soon be gone forever. Both confirm that nothing is real and this is just an alternate version of their lives. Roberto and Marco caused incidents that triggered the repetition, so they advise Daniel and Oliver not to do the same, or they will just experience a new loop. The two old men each insist that Oliver and Daniel write down their names to avoid forgetting them. In fact, the younger men received the same advice, but forgot to do it. Roberto tells Daniel that when he finally sees a police car, he will forget his name. While Marco tells Oliver the same thing will happen when he finds an open elevator in the building. Roberto then reveals his real name is Ruben. When he was 10 years old, he was trapped on a bamboo raft with a classmate named Juan and a teacher. Unfortunately, the teacher slipped and accidentally injured Juan, causing an incident. Juan bled for 3 days and nights until he finally died, and Ruben and the teacher decided to continue living in the loop for decades without finding land. When the teacher was nearing the end, Ruben received the same explanation, which he now recounts. It is revealed that the teacher was also once trapped in a loop on an endless train. After that, Ruben found his way back to land, where he met Sandra and the children, but he didn't clearly remember it until today. Marco tells a similar story, explaining that he was once Daniel and that Roberto advised him not to get into the police car. However, Daniel did so anyway and started a new life as Marco, without any memory. The two old men swear that this isn't real. They are just trapped in a temporary emotional hell. Their real selves are living good lives, moving forward physically and emotionally. They send energy to their real selves to create happiness. They are like machines driving the real world, which is why death is necessary to trigger the incident and why younger people survive for 35 years in a healthier manner. Subconsciously, they work for their real selves, who are still far from death, while the older ones can't do the same because they are always stuck in the past and not enjoying life. Before leaving forever, Roberto gives Daniel a red diary full of drawings and life notes, while Marco gives a similar diary to Oliver. Oliver decides to return to his routine while Daniel buries Roberto with the other family members. Daniel then walks until he finally finds a police car that wasn't there before. After ensuring the car is safe, Daniel returns to his tent to take the hamster and some other items, then burns the rest. However, when he returns to the police car and touches it, Daniel forgets everything, including the hamster, and leaves wearing a new uniform and a police badge he finds there. Daniel also cuts his hair and starts a new life as Detective Marco, triggering a new loop by killing Carlos. Meanwhile, Oliver tries his best to ignore the elevator that suddenly appears. He starts to lose control, even contemplating ending everything, but ultimately he can't go through with it. When prayers no longer help, Oliver finally gives in and decides to enter the elevator. Inside, he finds a service uniform and starts a new life as Carl, a hotel bellboy. Soon after, the elevator stops on a floor where a married couple enters, asking to be taken to the third floor. Although the couple is affectionate in the elevator, Carl remains silent until they reach their destination. Carl releases a bee that stings the groom, causing an allergic reaction, followed by a rumble like an explosion, signaling the start of a new loop, and the film concludes. So what I've gathered so far is that the story of El Incidente begins with a 35-year journey on a train, which then transitions to a 35-year journey on a raft. This is followed by a 35-year wait on an endless road, then being trapped for 35 years in an endless emergency staircase, and finally being stuck in a hotel for another 35 years. Essentially, although they survive, teacher, Ruben, Daniel, and Oliver do not remember anything, including their names, until they are close to death. They will say the same things as those who said them before, like Oliver, who has now become Carl, a hotel bellboy, without any memory of anything besides his current life and skills. When Carl releases a bee, he does so unknowingly, just like Daniel or Marco, who unknowingly fired a shot, and Roberto, who accidentally dropped the inhaler, and of course, teacher, who fell. The groom has an allergy and will likely die soon, confirming that Carl and the bride will spend 35 years wondering how they got trapped in this continuing madness. Carl will not realize that he is actually Oliver until he is near death. And that's it for the story series of this film. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to support this channel by subscribe, like, and share. See you in the next video. Goodbye.